we will go live. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, मुझे play பண்ணு. Intro play பண்ணிட்டு live பண்ணு.
शारदे पाहि मां शङ्कर रक्ष मां 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 शारदे पाहि मां शङ्कर रक्ष मां
Padaji will correct.
Om Sharada Sharadam Bhoja Vadana Vadanam Bhuje Sarvada Sarvada Smakam Sannidhis Sannidhin Kriyat Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ajnanam Jannavi Tirtam Vidya Tirtam Vivekinam Sarvesham Sukadam Tirtam Bharati Tirtamashaye Vidya Vinaya Sampannam Vitaragam Vivekinam Vande Vedanta Tattvajnam Vidushekara Bharatim Sadguru Charanarvindabhyam Namaha. So we are continuing our sessions on the Dharma Sastra, the Nyaya Shastra series. So I invite Dr. Jambunathan to start with the Dharma Shastra lectures first, and I'll follow later with the Nyaya Shastra that I would need to continue. Thank you.
Namaskarams to all. Happy Makara Sankranti. We just finished that important day a few days ago, and welcome to the new year. Shuklam Baradaram Vishnam Shashivarnam Sadarbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayechra Vignopashante Yashwadrida Vagdradya Parishadya Parasadam Vignam Dignadi Sadatam Vishwakshenam Tamashreyam Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalaspatika Kritim Adaram Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrimupasmahe Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devameshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sadashiva Shamarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Sruti Smruti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Harihi Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. So just to recap, last year we finished around October, November of last year, we finished with the Brahmacharya rules and regulations in the second chapter of Manusmriti. So we are now starting with the third chapter. As we discussed before in our introduction, Manusmriti has 12 chapters, and each of them cover different sections of our life and what to be done and what not to be done. And so this is the all-important Grahastha chapter, which we are starting from this session on. It's one of the largest chapters in the Manusmriti. It has about 286 slokas. As you know, the whole of Manusmriti has more than 2,400 slokas or something like that. So 286 slokas of that is dedicated to the Grahastha Dharma. And Manu, the great king and Manvantara ruler Manu has explained this to Bhrigu Maharishi, and Bhrigu Maharishi is the one who is actually voicing or explaining this. And he said that we talked about the introduction where Bhrigu Maharishi says that he got all this information from Manu, and he is revealing whatever Manu has told him, and that's how the topic goes. So this month I want to just give an overview, because 286 slokas, it is better to have an overview and kind of an introduction, what and all Manu covers in these 286 slokas as pertaining to grahastha dharma, and that way we have a kind of a summary of, or a synopsis of what is going to come. And so let me just start with, I put it under 8 different sections, the 286 slokas which Manu covers in this particular chapter. The first section deals with completion of Vedic studies and Samavardhanam. As we said, in Brahmacharya Ashrama, Manu gives elaborate details of how the Shishya should behave with the Guru, how the Shishya and the Guru should interact while the Vedic learning happens, and how the Shishya should go for the Bhiksha, the how to collect the food, which houses you should collect, which houses you should not collect. And then he ends up with Naishtika Brahmacharya. Who is a Naishtika Brahmachari, and what happens to a Naishtika Brahmachari after his death? So those all were discussed in the Brahmacharya Ashrama. So now, as a continuation, he states that first, after the Brahmachari completes his appropriate Vedic study, he gives 36 years, 18 years, 9 years. He gives different category of students. Like some students go all the way up to 36 years. So he says the Vedic studies can go up to that long. But these are the options he gives depending upon the interest and the mental capacity of the student. These were the different options available. And he says after the completion of the Vedic studies, the students undergo what is called Snataka and Samavartanam, which is the ritualistic bath after the completion of the Vedic studies, which prepares them to go into the Grahastha Ashrama Dharma. So after completing this Snataka, though it is also one of the samskaras, it is not described very detailed in the Manusmriti, the Apastamba Sutras, other things discussed. But since we are focused on, just to remember that after the Brahmacharya Ashrama, there is this procedure called Samavardhanam which happens, and only after that happens, the Brahmachari becomes eligible to go to the Grahastha Ashrama. So you complete the studies. It is like almost going to a graduation certificate day. You get your graduation, and then you are eligible to apply for a job. It's something similar to that. You go through a protocol after finishing the thing. So that is what is described by Manu. The second part he discusses about the marriage, and here he goes into all details about how to select the appropriate bride for the bridegroom, and depending upon the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, how each of them should select a bride according to their particular Varna and Ash, and what happens if mix and match happens. He kind of elaborates on all of those things, and also describes what are the qualities of a good bride and what are the qualities of a bad bride. And he brings examples which sometimes appear rude, but he says, don't pick up a bride from a family where epilepsy runs in the family. It makes common sense, because then the kids born to you also will suffer from epilepsy. So he gives you like all these things. Some of them may appear very abrupt and rude in the thing, but if you apply common sense, it will make sense. But now with medicine advance and other things, you can still have from those patients, from these families. But he gives like some of these common sense rules. Don't pick up bride from this particular family, so because then you will see that. So he goes into elaborate details on that. So that is the bride selection as per the Varna, as well as the other capacities like health and wealth and all those stuff. Then he describes the different types of marriages. Once you select the bride, what are the different types of marriages? And he describes 8 types of marriages, which I will probably cover a little bit on I won't go through all the slokas, but because this is an overview lecture, he talks about the 8 different types of marriages, and he says out of which the 4 are better and 4 are bad. So out of the 8 marriages, he says 4 of them are good type marriages, and 4 of them are really not preferred marriages, and some of them are recommended only for Kshatriyas or Vaishyas and Sudras. And then he talks about the guidance even for the marital sex. There is some rules and regulations to be followed even after marriage, so that you still maintain your you can procreate and have kids, but at the same time have some sense control and no overindulgences and things like that. So there is some rules and regulations which he goes also for that part after the marriage. So, and then the next part he talks about the Aupasanam and the Panchamaha Yajnas. about how right after the marriage, from the marriage fire, you have the upasana, which is the the smarta karmas, because there is the shruti karmas, which is based on the Shrauta karmas. We call Shrauta karmas, which comes from the Shruti, and Smarta karmas come from the Smriti. The Upasana fire is obtained right after the marriage, and whatever sacrifices you perform in the Upasana come under the Smarta karmas or the Grihya Sutras. And then, based upon the Vedic thing, the Agnihotra, those comes another different fire, the three types of fire, the Garhyapatya, Aghavaniya, and Dakshinagni, the Treta Agni. So when you do the Vedic karmas, it is a three-tiered fire, whereas Upasana has only one fire, Ekagni and Treta Agni. So the Ekagni is Upasana, which obtains right after marriage, and for people who also are going to do Shrauta karmas, Agnihotra, which it doesn't actually cover much actually of the Agnihotra here, probably comes a little later, but it talks about briefly about the Shrauta karmas also, and the Agni Adana and other things. So those are the next. So, and then he covers in detail the Pancha Maha Yajnas, the Brahma Yajna, the Deva Yajna, the Pitru Yajna, the Manusha Yajna, and Bhuta Yajna. He goes into details. This chapter, he goes through the nuts and bolts of how to feed a gust, how to do the Pitru karmas, how to do the the Deva Yajna. So all those things he goes into. The Panchamaha Yajnas is one of the big topics covered in the Grahasthashrama Dharma. So there's a lot of slokas dedicated to that. And then he picks up only one particular called Vaishwadevam, which is also, the Vaishwadevam comes under Deva karmas as well as Bhuta karmas, because you satisfy the the Bhutas as well as the Devas. So the Vaishwadevam is given very important here, and he talks about how to perform this Vaishwadevam. The Vaishwadevam in the morning, the Vaishwadevam in the evening. The Vaishwadevam in the morning is done by the male of the family with mantras. The Vaishwadevam in the evening is done by the female of the family without mantras. He goes to all the details about this Vaishwadevam rituals here. And then the seventh is the Pitrus. He goes through elaborate who are these Pitrus, and he kind of gives a category of their origin, their classification, and he puts different groups of Pitrus. So that is a few slokas dedicated to it. And the last part of it is actually the Shraddha karmas, the Shraddham, and he again goes into very great details of how should he select a Brahmana for the Shraddha, and then how should you collect the materials for the Shraddha, and then how you exactly choose the other people who can attend the Shraddha, and then what are the steps involved. And he, it doesn't go through the mantras which you chant, but he describes the steps and all those things, and how the Brahmins have to give the Asirvad in the end, the blessings. So he goes through all these details, and he also gives very, very interesting points, like if you offer this for the Pitru karmas, what benefits you get, and he talks about lot of because in the Vedic karmas there are some animal sacrifices, which is that is kind of minimized during the Kali Yuga, and Buddha is the one who actually talked more about it. But there is a role of the animal sacrifices which have come, but Appaya Dikshidhar has proved that these animals which are sacrificed in the yajnas, they actually go to a higher level. But we are not propagating that. But he talks about and I put one of our local groups is a very interesting point. He said that Khadga Mamsa, rhinoceros meat, if you offer the rhinoceros meat to the Pitrus in one of the Pitru karmas, they are satisfied eternally. So if Padmanabhanji is tired of doing Shraddha karmas every year, he offers rhinoceros meat one time, that's it, he's done. But but if you do rhinoceros meat one time, you'll be caught up for poaching and put in the jail. So your Pitrus will be eternally free, but you will be eternally in jail. But that is just to go. But it was a very interesting anecdote that he mentions that Khadga Mamsa and Lohita Mesha Mamsa. Lohita means red or black, and Mesha Rasi is goat. The red goat, he says, the Khadga Mamsa and the Lohita Mesha Mamsa, if you offer, it gives eternal satisfaction to Pitrus, it seems. So it's like a one-time deal. But that is, and then he talks about the importance of the elephant shadow, which which is called Gajachaya. So that is the elephant is Gaja and Chaya is shadow. The Gajachaya, which is the Trayodasi in the Bhadrapada month, the Bhadrapada month, the Pitru Paksha, the Trayodasi, when the sun is in Hasta Nakshatra and the moon is in Maga Nakshatra, that is very auspicious. He says, if you do again a Shraddha during that time, it also gives eternal. So those is the time. So the Gajachaya is eternal satisfaction based on time. and the rhinoceros meat and the lohita mesha mamsa is based on the material you offer. So depending upon the time and the material used for the pitru karmas, you can give them eternal satisfaction. So he goes into all these details. So this is all the 8 parts which he covers here. The completion of the Vedic studies and Samavardhanam, how to select the brides, what are the different types of marriages, the guidance for marital sex, the Aupasanam and the Panchamaha Yajnas, the Vaishudeva and the Atiti Samskara, which is how to it goes a lot of slokas, how to treat a guest, how to worshipfully treat a guest in your home. He goes through all those things and again puts very clearly, don't call your close friend and call him as a guest. That's not a guest. If you call your old very close friend to come and stay with your home for 2 days and give him nice taking him around every places, that is not considered Ati Samskara. So he gives criteria like what is Ati Samskara and all, and then like all the details about the Shraddha Karmas. So what I will do is I will just pick up little bits, 1 or 2 slokas on each part, because it's an introduction, so that you get a teaser of what is going to come, and then you will know the details later. So just to I'll pick up slokas. I'm covering all slokas here and there, but this is just a teaser of what is to come, so that you have a broad idea what Manu is covering in all those chapters. For example, in the second sloka of the 3rd chapter, he says, Vedan Aditya Vedo Va Vedam Vapi Yatakramam Avipluda Brahmacharyo Grahasthashram Mavaset. Vedan Aditya Vedo Va Vedam Vapi Yatakramam Avipluda Brahmacharyo Grahasthashram Mavaset. And that basically means when the student has completed Yatakramam according to the rules, he has completed the Vedic studies, he is eligible to cross over the Brahmacharya Ashrama into the Grahastha. So that's what he is telling in sloka number 2. And then in sloka number 5, he says, Asapinda Chaya Madhurasa, Asapinda Chaya Mathurasa, no, Mathura, sorry. Asapinda Chaya Mathura, Sagotra Chaya Pituhu, Sa Prashasta Dvijatinam Dhara Karmani Maitune. Very important rule. Asapinda Chaya Mathura, Sagotra Chaya Pituhu, Sa Prashasta Dvijatinam Dhara Karmani Maitune. He says, if you choose a girl, the first criteria he puts it, that girl should not be in any blood relation to your mother, to the mother of the bridegroom, or he should not be in the same gotra of the father. So he gives 2 criteria. Sagotra means same gotra. Pitu, Sagotra. Asapinda, Mathura. Asapinda means who shares the blood relation. Pinda means blood relations. Asapinda means there should be no blood relationship to the mother. So that is why even marrying the mother's elder brother's daughter or something is kind of not agreeable according to Manusmriti. There is a lot of that custom which happens. They marry them, Mam and Magal is become very popular term, marrying your uncle's daughter or something like that. But anybody who is related by blood in the mother's side or is related by the gotra on the father's side, they should be excluded. That is the first criteria he puts. He goes on to other criteria. I'm just giving only the teaser slokas in this chapter. So this is sloka number 5. And then coming to sloka number 20, he says, Chaturnam api varnanam priyetya cheha hitahitan ashtaviman samasena stri vivahan nibodata. Chaturnam api varnanam priyetya cheha hita ahitan ashtaviman samasena stri vivahan nibodata. Now for all the 4 varnas, I am going to explain Ashtaviman, the 8 types of marriages, 3 Vivahan, Nibodata. I'm going to educate you guys on the 8 types of marriage for all the Chatur Varnas, the 4 Varnas. Hita, Ahitan means Hita is good, Ahita is bad. What is good also in these marriages and what is bad also. So he's going to explain the 8 types of marriages, and out of the 8 types of marriages, which of them are good and which of them are bad. And then he goes, I picked up sloka number 21 too. Brahmo Daivataista Varshaha Daivastataiva Arshaha Prajapatya Tata Asuraha Gandharvo Rakshasashchaiva Paishashchascha Ashtamo Adamah Brahmo Daivas Tataiva Arshah Prajapatyas Tata Asurah Gandharvo Rakshasasaiva Paishashchascha Ashtamodamah. So those are the 8 types of marriages. It says Brahma Vivaha, Daiva Vivaha, Arsha Vivaha, Prajapatya Vivaha, Asura Vivaha, Gandharva Vivaha, Rakshasa Vivaha, Paishasha Vivaha. So 8 different types of marriages. He actually goes to describe all of them. And he says out of this Brahma, Daiva, Arsha, Prajapatya, these are all the Hita, the acceptable type of marriages. Asura, Gandharva, Rakshasa, Paishasha are the unacceptable type of marriages. And even in these 4, he says Brahma is better than Daiva, Daiva is better than Arsha, Arsha is better than Prajapatya. He tells even the categories. And same way, Gandharva is better than Rakshasa, Rakshasa is better than Asura is better than Gandharva is better than Asura, Asura is better than Rakshasa, Rakshasa is better than Paishasha. He describes all these and he says Paishascha marriage is the worst. Paishascha marriage is what the villains do in the movie. They will tie up the girl, they will intoxicate the girl, then they will rape the girl, then they will force them to marry. That is the example. Paishascha marriage means they actually intoxicate or make the girl unconscious and then forcibly get married to her. That is the Paishascha marriage. And he says that is the one which should be avoided even by Shudras. He says you should avoid that. But then he says the Rakshasa is where, there are slokas which come. What is the Rakshasa marriage means? Basically, the kings are allowed to do it, it seems, once in a while. Kshatriyas, he gives the exception. Rakshasa is, if you desire a girl, you forcibly pluck her out of her home, despite opposition from the girl and the family, and you take her out for marriage. You need forcibly rape her before the marriage by, intoxication, or if you do that, that becomes Paishascha. But here you forcibly go, get the girl from the, for example, what Lord Krishna did to Rukmini is kind of that, but there Rukmini accepted the marriage, but actually Krishna forcibly picks up Rukmini from the brother Rukmi, everybody, and comes. But the only difference is Rukmini also like Krishna, but in Rakshasa marriage, the girl also is disliking it, the family is also disliking it. You forcibly pluck the girl out and use your power and get married. So that is Rakshasa marriage. So Paishasa, Rakshasa. Asura marriage is basically you give lot of wealth, kind of bribe the father and get the girl. Sometimes you see in our Indian movies too, the guy is 65 years old, the girl is only 20 years old. The 65-year-old gives lot of money to the father and bribes the father and marries the young girl and come. So that is the example of Asura marriage, where you bribe the family with excess wealth and get the girl and come. Then comes Gandharva, which is what is happening day in and day out, which is love marriage. The boy and girl meet, they like each other, and they didn't get consent from the parents. They loved each other and they decide to. That is what Shakuntala and Dushyanta did in Shakuntala. They met each other, they fell in love, and they decided to get married. So that is called Gandharva Vivaha. So the Gandharva, Asura, Rakshasa, Paishasha are the 4 inferior categories. The Brahma Vivaha is where a very appropriately qualified Vedic brahmachari is well qualified, is tejasvi, is very appearance is blazing with knowledge. For that particular boy, the girl's father himself goes to approaches the boy with all respect and offers the girl without any expectation. That is called Brahma marriage. Daiva marriage means when there is a big homa is happening, a big ritvi, like one of the Soma Yajnas or Havi Yajnas is happening, and one of the Ritviks who is a well-performing Ritvik, one of them goes and offers the daughter for marriage for the well-performing Ritvik in the Homa time itself. That is what called Daiva Vivaha. Brahma Vivaha, Daiva Vivaha. Then what is Prajapati and Arsha is basically you give in all the scenarios, the boy has to only give money to the girl. If you see that now the situation is reversed, which Mahaperi also makes big comment in the Devatin Kurandal. In the old, if you read the Manusmriti, every situation the boy has to give some compensation to the girl's family. But when the girl's family doesn't accept the compensation, without any acceptance, they give to the Ritvik. That's what is called Brahma Vivaha. But if the boy gives like a cow and a bull, like a male cow and a female cow pair to the father or the family of the girl and gets the girl in return, that is what is called Arsha Vivaha, which is acceptable also, but it is still inferior to Brahma and Daiva. And Prajapatya is where the father marries the boy and girl are duly qualified, but the father says you should follow certain rules. I am going to marry you guys, but you should live within these rules and regulations. He kind of enforces some rules on them, which might be even good rules also, but it is still called Prajapatya. So Prajapatya means when the father enforces some rules. When Arsha means the boy gives a cow and a bull to the girl's father and gets the girl married. Daiva is when the father goes to the big homa ceremony and as a ritvik he offers to the girl. And Brahma is where he goes in, not in a homa, directly to his home to a well-qualified person, and he invites him to get married and gives him without expecting anything. That's Brahma Vivaha. So, and all these 8 marriages I just told you verbally, but there is slokas for each of these marriages which Manu describes in this chapter. And he also tells the benefits of what is the advantage of Brahma Vivaha, what is the disadvantage of Rakshasa Vivaha. He also goes through the pros and cons. So those are all described in detail in the types of marriages. Then coming to the, in terms of the, let me see what else to, I picked up sloka number 66 and 67. Because like there are so many. Okay, 66 it says mantratastu smriddani kulan alpadananapi kulasankyam cha gachanti karshanti cha mahad yashah. Mantratastu smriddani kulan alpadananapi kulasankyam cha gachanti karshanti cha mahad yashah. Mahad yashah means great fame, great. He says the family where mantras are constantly chanted with all the due rules and regulation. Kulan alpadananapi. Alpadana means even if they are poor in money. Dana means money. Alpadana means less money. Even the family where mantras are constantly being chanted with following rules and regulations, even if they have less money, that family will actually prosper very well for generations. So now we see boy and girl don't even get married. They get married, there is no kids they're having. They have kids, the kids have problems. So all these sequelae we are seeing all in front of our own eyes. You'll have one friend who has kids are not married at all. You'll have one friend whose kid got married and got divorced right away. You'll see one kid who got married and they have no kids at all. So you can see within your own friend circles, you can see all these problems. So that is what he's saying. The family where mantras are constantly chanted with rules and regulations, even if they have less money, that the family is one is going to be very prosperous for generations. Sloka 67. Vaivahike agno kurvita grihyam karma yata vidhi panchayagya vidanam cha panktim chan vahikim grihi. So this sloka basically says, take the Agni from your marriage and start the Upasana. I'm not going to details of all slokas now because this is only an overview lecture. But the 67th sloka says, take the marriage fire, bring it home and start your Upasana. That is what is the, remember I told you it talks about Upasana there. Sloka number 69. Tasam kremena sarvasam nishkrutyartam maharshibihi panchaklupta mahayajnyaha pratyaham grihamedinam. Tasam kremena sarvasam nishkrutyartam maharshibihi panchaklupta mahayajnyaha pratyaham grihamedinam. He says the rishis, the great rishis have created this pancha mahayajnas pratyaham, which should be done daily. And this being done daily, all the great sins of this janma, previous janma, all will go away. So he says the Panchamaha Yajnas, that is the introductory sloka he gives. That's why I was reading that. And then he gives a small talks about the Panchamaha Yajnas briefly. Adhyapanam Brahma Yajnaha, Pitru Yajnastu Tarpanam, Homo Daivo Balir Bhuto, Niru Yajno Atiti Pujanam. Adhyapanam Brahma Yajnaha, studying the Vedas is Brahma Yajna. Pitru Yajnastu Tarpanam, offering the tila and water to the Pitrus is Tarpanam, that is Pitru Yajna. Homo Daivo, for the Devas, you do all the homas, either in the Upasana or in the Agnihotra, you do it. Balir Budo, you give the balis for all the Bhuta. So in currently Bali means killing animals, but Bali is what basically means is the same offering, the same food. Even in temples, you can see they do Bali. Bali means you are not giving the food into the fire. If you take the havis and give it with ghee and put it in the fire, that becomes homa. If you take the food and directly place it on the ground in different directions or different ways, that is called Bali. So Bali is offering the same materials what you offer in the homa, but you're not offering in the fire. You offer directly into the ground. But there are rules which direction you apply and all that things are there, which he goes to describe in later things. So Balir Bhuto. Niru Yajna means Manusha, Naran, which means the humans. Nara, Niru, that against Atiti Pujanam, satisfying the gust or worshipping the gust is called Manusha Yajna, Niru Yajna. So he gives the broad definition. Adhyapanam Brahma Yajna, Pitru Yajnastu Tarpanam, Homo Daivo Balir Budo, Niru Yajna, Atiti Pujanam. Panchaitanyo Mahayajnan na hapayati shaktitah sagruhe api vasan nityam shuna doshir na lipyate. He says, Panchaitanyo Mahayajnan na hapayati shaktitah sagruhe api vasan nityam shuna doshir na lipyate. Na lipyate means not attached. He says no sins will get attached for the place where these Panchamaha are happening with great faith and devotion. He says and even if you have less money, you can perform to the less, according to your monetary capacity. He says that's there. The families which perform these Maha Yajnas, na lipyate, he says all the doshas will not get attached to those families. And then he talks about sloka number 73. This is a very nice definition. Ahutam cha hutam chaiva tata prahutameva cha brahmyam hutam prashitam cha pancha yajnan prachakshate. Ahutam cha hutam chaiva tata brahma hutam eva cha brahmyam hutam prashitam cha pancha yajnan prachakshate. Japo ahuto huto homah prahuto baudiko balihi brahmyam hutam dvijagrashyaha prashitam pitru tarpanam. He gives 5 terms. Ahutam, hutam, brahma hutam, ahutam, hutam, Brahma hutam, prahutam, prashitam. So 5 terms. Ahutam, hutam, prahutam, brahmya hutam, prakshitam. And it defines all them. Ahutam is japa. Hutam is putting in homa. Prahutam is the bali which you put in the ground. Brahmya hutam is, worshipping the brahmanas. Prashitam is pitru tarpanam. So basically, this is the different terminologies he used. And japo here means, japam means not japam mantra japam. The studying the Vedas itself is considered japam there. That is the Brahma yajna which comes. And the Dvijagacharya is the, worshipping the brahmanas or giving the food to them is Atiti Pujanam. But he says not only giving food to the brahmanas, he gives a list. The Atiti Pujanam is described very detailed in Manu. How you should even satisfy the lowest chandala. He says you should give food right from the top all the way to the lowest and the sickest of the categories. Not only that, you should give food to all the ants and animals, everything. There's a big detailed description of how the food should be given to every creature in the earth. That is what it is described in that slokas, those things. And then comes and then it talks about, he says, people who are still in poverty but who are chanting the Vedas without fail, they will actually have a better life, like afterlife and all those things that he talks that, but we will cover when we come to those chapters. Then sloka number 81. Swadhyayen archayet rushin homair devan yata vidhi pitrun shraddhaischa nirun annair bhutani balikarmana. And he also says who and all get satisfied. Swadhyayen archayet rushin. By doing the swadhyaya, reading the Vedas, you actually satisfy or you are actually worshipping the rishis. Homair devan. By doing the homas, you satisfy the devas. Homa Yata Vidya. According to the rules, if you do the Homa, you satisfy the Devas. Pitrun Shraddhaishcha. By doing the Shraddhas and Tarpanas regularly, Pitrus will be satisfied. Nirun Annair. The humans get satisfied by giving food. Another the food, and Bhutani Balikarmana. All the Bhutas will be satisfied by doing the balis. So he again gives a summary of all the things what are to be done. But again, I didn't go to the details. We'll be covering in the ensuing weeks. That is that. And then he comes to this interesting sloka 203. Now there is a lot of slokas again I said about how to do the shraddham. He picks up individual nuts and bolts and goes through but the introductory sloka is very nice sloka. Devakaryartha dvijadinam pitrukaryam vishishyate daivam hi pitrukaryasya purvam apyayanam smrutam. Devakaryat dvijatinam pitrukaryam vishishyate daivam hi pitrukaryasya purvam apyayanam smrutam. So he says for the between devakarmas and pitrukarmas are vishishyate, they are special. So between, if a brahmana has to choose between doing devakarmas and pitrukarmas, dvijas, the dvijas, again brahmana, kshatriya and vaishyas, if the dvijas have to choose between doing devakarmas and pitrukarmas are the more special. He gives that. But daivam hi pitrukaryasya purvam apyayanam smrutam. But once he starts doing pitrukarmas, you should do a daiva puja there first, which is actually if people have been doing shraddham, they will do when you are invoking your devas and the pitrus in the brahmanas, you have to first invoke the Vishwe devas, then only invoke the pitrus, and then you invoke Vishnu. So that is the sequence. And he says, so the pitrukaryas are better than the devakaryas, but in the pitrukaryas, you should first only worship the devas, which is the Vishwe devas. The Vishwe devas have to be worshipped first in the pitrukarya, and then only you should start the regular pitrukarya. So again, that's what he puts it poetically. That is a sloka number 203. And sloka number 272. This is what I was talking about in the beginning. Kalashaka mahashalkaha kadgaloha misham madu anantyayeva kalpyante munyennanija sarvashah. Kalashakam mahashalkaha kadgaloha misham madu anandayeva kalpyante munyennanija sarvashah. If you offer, that is why I was telling the rhinoceros meat and the loha misham. The loha mesham means the red goat. The red goat's meat. Anantyayeva kalpante. For kalpas, the pitrus will be satisfied, it seems. But like I said, if you offer rhinoceros meat, pitrus will be liberated, you will be in jail. So, and then sloka number 273. Yat kinchit maduna mishram parayatyatu trayodashim tadap akshayameva syad varshanucha magasucha. Yat kinchit maduna mishram parayatyatu trayodashim tadapya akshayameva syad varshanucha magasucha. Apinascha kule jayat yayo no dadya trayodashim payasam madhusarbibhyam prak shagaye kunjarasya. So, without going to the details, he talks about the Trayodashi which comes in the Bhadrapada Masa. He gives all those, he doesn't directly say the words. In the rainy month, when Maga Nakshatra is there, when Hasta Nakshatra is there, he gives all these indirect clues and you have to figure it out. It actually is Bhadrapada, Kanya Rasi, when the sun goes in Sanya Rasi. And the Kunjarasya, Shaka, Kunjarasya means, the Kunjaram means is elephant. Chaya is the shadow. Kunjarasya Chaya means Gajat Chaya, which is the 13th day again of the Bhadrapada Masa. He says it seems the Pitrus are doing prayers. When will I get a son or a grandson in my family who will do Pitru Tarpanam during this Gajat Chaya period? So that is the period which is very important. The Manu is, it seems the Pitrus are praying, when will I get somebody in my family who will do with very great faith the Shraddha in the Gajachaya period. So that is the importance of the rhinoceros meat and the Gajachaya period, like which time is very important and which offerings you give. So that is just an overview I want to cover. I know there is only all these different slokas, but that's kind of the overview of the the third chapter, where he goes through all these different marriages, the yajnas, the shraddhas, everything. And over time, we'll be covering all these in detail. But with this, I want to stop today, and I let Padmanabhanji continue. Shriya Kantaya Kalyana Nade Artinam Shri Venkata Nivasaya Srinivasaya Mangalam Mangalam Koshalendraya Mahaniya Gunaptem Chakravarti Tanujaya Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam.
Thank you, Dr. Jambunathan. Vidaya Hridi Visvesham Vidaya Guruvandanam Balanam Sukhabodhaya Kriyate Tarka Sangraha. So Namaste. I think we'll continue on the Tarka Sangraha. We have been, I think it's a very long break that we had. I mean, I had some issues, and I think we're not able to make it in the last few months. So I just thought about to summarize where we are in the syllabus, and before we start with the next chapter. So what I do is I just try to put together a hierarchical view of where we are and how the Nyaya Shastra works, right? So the Nyaya Shastra here takes the world as a Jagat. So the world has to be understood as 7 padarthas. That's what we started with. So the 7 padarthas are Dravya, Guna, Karma, Samanya, Vishesha, Samavaya, and Abhava. So these are the 7 padarthas. Under the 7 padarthas, under the Dravya padartha, we have 9 of them, which is the earth, Prithvi, Apaha, water, Tejaha, fire, Vayuhu, air, Akasha, space, Kala, time, Dik, direction, Manaha, mind, and Atma. So these are the 9 sub padarthas, or we call them as the 9 dravyas. So we went through the definition of all those 9 dravyas. So we said the world is made up of 7 padarthas, and of the 7 padarthas, we started with each padartha, and we went through each of the definitions of each of these items. And then the guna. Guna is a quality. So dravya and guna. So the guna is the quality, that's the second padartha. It is composed of 24 different types of guna. There are Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Sparsha, Sankhya, Parimana, Pratakta, Samyoga, Vibhaga, and all those things. There are 24 different types of gunas are available. And out of those gunas, we covered almost a few of them, about 10 to 12 of them. And those gunas are, again, descriptive. Like what is Rupa? It's a color and the taste and the touch and the smell and all those things. And the very important guna of all the things is the buddhi. Buddhi is the intellectual or intelligence. So that is a very important guna. And that is where we spent our time, because out of the world, out of the guna, out of the buddhi, this is the most important area where we are focusing. So we have covered up to the Shabda, and the buddhi is where we are working on right now, because the buddhi is where the whole tarka, the philosophy of arguments and everything work. So now if I go to the buddhi, then we expanded on the buddhi here, and the buddhi has 2 different types of expansion here. There's smriti and anubhava. The anubhava is the experience that is happening, and the smriti is the remembrance of those experiences. So much we don't have to dwell much on the smriti, but the anubhava is the most important thing that we need to dwell on. And then the anubhava has 2 different types of anubhava, which is a real anubhava, that is a real experience where we gain the true knowledge. And we get the ayatartha anubhava, which is the brahma, where we get the confusion. So obviously we are interested in the true knowledge. So we go with the yathartha pramana, the yathartha anubhava, and that is called as the prama. So now to understand this prama, we take 4 different aspects or 4 different knowledge points to understand this pramanam. So what are those? They are the pratyaksha pramanam, anumana pramanam, upamana pramanam, and shabda pramanam. Again, pratyaksha pramanam is something which we understand through our senses. So indriyartha sannikarsha jnanam. So the indriyartha sannikarsha jnanam is we use our indriyas to understand this existence. So that is what the pratyaksha pramanam is. And the pratyaksha pramanam has 2 different states. There is a states, this is not classification, but it's just a state. The nirvikalpa and the savikalpa, where in the nirvikalpa, it is just you get a hazy view of what is happening. In the savikalpa, you try to cognize that. So that is verbalize it, if you for a better word. So here it's in a non-verbalizable state, and here it is in a verbalized state. So so the Savikalpa state, to understand the Savikalpa state, we have 6 different states, with 6 different types of knowledge that is there. There's a Samyoga, which is a contact and inherence, and there's a contact with inherence with contact, and then there is an inherence, and then there's again there is an inherence, and there is a Visheshana Vishesha Bhava, which is a qualified relationship. So these are the different types of Savikalpa. Through this, we understand the Pratyaksha knowledge. Now, again, the Pratyaksha is pretty easy because it is something we understand. We just see as mountain, we know that is a mountain. Or we smell a coffee, we know that is coffee. So it is very, very easy to understand. But what is very important to understand is the Anumana Pramana. So again, we said the Jagat, which is out of the Jagat, the Guna is important. Out of the Guna, Buddhi is important. Out of the Buddhi, Anumanam is important. Because Anumanam is where everything that whatever we are trying to prove is really working on. So that is where we spend a lot of time so far. And the Anumanam is of 2 types, which is the Swartha Anumana and the Parartha Anumana. The Swartha Anumana is for my own understand, I have to convince myself. I think that's, again, with the true knowledge. So, which I'm convinced it's okay, that's fine. But the Parartha Anumana is very important because in the debates, you have to convince your arguments to others. So the Parartha Anumana is defined by 5 different classes: the Pratigya, Hetu, Udaharanam, Upanaya, and Nigamanam. So the Pratigya is the construct that comes there. The Hetu is the reason why this is happening. The Udaharanam give an example. Upanaya is the explanation, and the Nigamanam is the description. So the Nigamanam is the statement that it is so like that. So these are the 5 different classifications of the Parartha Anumanam. And then we saw that Anumanam is cast due to a Linga Paramarsha. And the Linga Paramarsha, we did 3 of them. There's a positive relationship, there is a negative relationship, or there's a relationship where there's a positive and negative. We just went through that. And then we came to know about the terms called Paksha, Sapaksha, and Vipaksha. So the Paksha is the place where our doubt is happening, wherever the Sadhyam, whatever we are trying to prove, is existing in the Paksha. So that's where we'll be focusing on our idea that we need to establish. So if you say the mountain has fire in it, the Paksha becomes the mountain. So that place where the Sandigdham is there. Sandigdha Sadhyavan Paksha, where there is a doubt, that we call it as a Paksha. Nishchita Sadhyavan Sapaksha. So sometimes to understand the Paksha, we need a Sapaksha also to do that, because a place where this particular kind of activity will really happen. We know that for sure that will happen. For example, if the kitchen has fire in it, we know that because we have seen the kitchen having a fire in it. So that way we call it as a Sapaksha. In the Vipaksha, we say where the Paksha Abhavavan. So the Sadhya Sadhya Abhavavan. The Sadhya is not there. So will never be there. If you take a lake, for example, the fire will never be there in the lake. So that is a Vipaksha. So we use these 3 terms a lot. So Paksha, Sapaksha, and Vipaksha. So we try to understand, we try to use our theories, and we try to prove whatever we know this knowledge in a debate. And then we say this is how our inference works, and if this is how the knowledge piece of it works. Now, the most important part of that is there is a place where what happens if the Hetu is wrong, the reason or the cause of this knowledge is wrong. So that is a very, very important point, right? If the Hetu is wrong in a discussion, the point that needs to be proved, that is a Sadhya, can never be proved. So that means we lose the inferential knowledge. So we need to validate the Hetu. That's a very important thing. So in a debate, if an opponent makes a mistake in the Hetu, I mean, during the discussion, if the reasoning itself is wrong, if the reason for the whole proposition is wrong, then in an argument, if one of the other opponent finds it out, then right away that argument gets over, and that's called as a Nigrahasthanam. So the Hetu has to be perfect. That's what we call it as a Sad Hetu. So now what are the things, what are the impediments to understand this Hetu? There is something called as a Hetva Bhasaha. So why the Abhasa Hetus are there, and how these Abhasa Hetus are preventing us from understanding the real truth. And that is what we are going to start from today. So similarly, we have seen in the past that we have seen the Lakshana Hetu, Lakshana doshas like Avyapti, Ativyapti, and Asambhava, where in the Avyapti state we say when somebody says cow is white, which means it is an under definition because cows can be brown or any other colors also available, whatever cows are available in that color. So that is Avyapti. Ativyapti is a over definition where we say four-legged animals are cows. So four-legged animal, cow is a four-legged animal. If I try to describe that, then it is not covering the four-legged animals. It's not covering just a cow. It is also covering dogs and elephants and whatever that is there. So that means that is also a dosha there. And asambhavaha, now we try to say, which is probably not even there. For example, cows have two hoofs in them, but if you say there's a single hoof cow, that's also not possible. So those are the Lakshana definitions. That is where that is the point when we're trying to define an object, we have to make it very clear. Similarly, in the Anumana Pramana, the Hetu is a very important aspect. And the Hetva Bhasaha is what we will start today. And once we complete the whole Tarka Sangraha book, I'll try to fill up all those other elements. And then if we have any subdivisions, we'll just go through this to summarize that. So with that context, we start with the Hetva Bhasaha. We did start with the last Hetva Bhasa. In the last section, we started with the Hetva Bhasa slide. So we said, Savyabhichara Viruddha Satpratipaksha Asiddha Baditaha Pancha Hetva Bhasaha. So there are 5 different types of Hetva Bhasaha. That means defects in the Hetu, defects in the reasoning. So
sorry, sorry to interrupt. You usually share slides. We're not seeing. Are you?
Oh, I am sorry.
For the last 10, I thought you were recapturing, but I know usually you share good slides, and that's why I want to interrupt and see whether you forgot to share the slides. So,
thank you, sir. I mean, I'm sorry. I think I have to show you the other work that we did with the Jagat. Let me just quickly go through this inside and share with due apologies.
Yes.
So
If you could
this
share
is the hierarchical structure. The world is a Jagat. And actually, I was moving my cursor here, but I probably didn't realize that I was not sharing. Hope you see my screen. So the Dravya, Guna, Karma, Samanya, Vishesha, Samavaya, Abhavaha. And then out of the Dravya, we saw these 9 Dravyas and the 24 Gunas. Out of the 24 Gunas, we are here. And that's what I was trying to click on this, but probably I didn't show you what it is. So, so then all those different classifications under them. And then we click on the Buddhi and we go to the Buddhi is split into Smriti, Anubhava, Yatata, and Brahmanas, which are there, Nevikalpa and Savikalpa, and different types of Savikalpa, Jnanam, and Paratas and the Hetus and everything, and then the Linga Paramasha, the Vitireki, Paksha, Sapaksha, etc. And now we are going to go to the Hetva Bhasaha. So that is the progression that we have made. So that's what I was trying to tell in the previous, but I think I spoke over it, but that's just to re-summarize it. Anyway, so we'll come back to this slide here, which I think we should probably do a slideshow. So, Savyabhichara Viruddha Satpratipaksha Asiddha Bhaditaha Pancha Hetva Bhasaha. So, in the good grounds, Sadhetu, the true knowledge of the Sadhya is obtained. The Sadhya is the one which we are trying to prove. And the Sadhetu means the real reasoning or the true reasoning, possesses an invariable relationship with the item that needs to be proved. That's with the Sadhya. If the Hetu does not provide a relationship with a sadhya, if the reasoning is not correct, or if the reasoning is not having a relationship with what we need to prove, then it becomes the Hetva Bhasaha. That's where we get the Hetva Bhasaha. The defects of the reasoning can happen. There are 5 different types of reasoning issues, right? So there are Savyabhichara, which means you try to explain a reason, but the reason has a lot of inconsistencies in them. And there is a Viruddha, which means you try to go with an opposite of trying to go totally different kind of argument there. The reasoning itself has no relationship there. And in the Satpratipaksha, there is a parallel counter argument, but when you have a parallel counter argument, you probably see nowadays there is no conclusion. There is no reasonable conclusion in the debates and all those things. That's kind of a Satpratipaksha. In the Asiddha, basically it is the whole reasoning is not even established there. And in the Bhadita, it is contradictory. It is the reasoning itself is contradictory. So these are the 5 different types of fallacies. And out of those fallacies, we'll have some of them have sub-classifications. So we start with the Savya Vichara. The Savya Vichara indicates inconsistency or variable. So this is not going to help us in getting the Anumanam, which is the inferential knowledge. We're trying to infer smoke from fire. Because smoke does not exist with the fire. Whenever there is fire, fire also can remain without smoke. So fire is treated as a asadhetu. So just because smoke is there, I mean, just because of the smoke, we can just because fire is there, the smoke need not be there. So that means the fire does not become a reasoning for the smoke has to be there. So that is a bad hetu. So that is a generally inconsistent definition there. Savya Vichara is also known as Anaikantika. So Ekantika means it's just Ekantika means it gives a focused understanding and just comes to a conclusion there. Anaikantika means it just goes in all different directions, but we are not going to get to the real reasoning issue there. So there are 3. Those are the Sadharana. There are 3 different types of inconsistencies. Sadharana, which is generally inconsistent. Asadharana, which is uniquely inconsistent, and Anupasamhari, which is inconclusive. So these are the 3 different types of inconsistent definitions. So in the case of a generally inconsistent situation, the hetu may be present, but the property that needs to be proved is absent. So this is a sadhya abhavavat vrittihi. So when the sadhya, what you are trying to prove is not there. So there is it cannot be clearly proved. Then it becomes a sadharana hetvabhasaha, sadharana savya vichara hetvabhasaha. So if it is argued that the mountain has fire because it has the state of being the object of pramana. So let's go through the slokam again. Tatra sadhya abhavavidrittihi sadharano anaikantikah. Eta parvato vanniman prameyatvat iti prameyatvasya vanni abhavavati hriday vidyamanatvat. So if it is argued that the mountain has fire because it has a state of, it is understood by the cognition, it is understood by the true cognition called prama, then this is a false ground, because we cannot just say because the mountain is there, it has fire. Because we have to have some other reasoning. The mountain cannot be the reason to the fire, because the mountain can be there even without the fire. So that place, it is a very generally inconsistent definition. So just because I know there is a mountain, that's my true cognition, and that we cannot prove that the mountain has fire because I know that there is a mountain. Say the same cognition, say the knowledge of lake is also present in me. I know there is a lake. Lake will never have a fire. So I know my knowledge does not tell me that the mountain has fire, because I have to have a valid reason to prove that the mountain has fire. Other examples are, since the animal has a tail, it has a lion. Not necessary, because it can be any other animal. So we cannot have inconsistent definitions like that. In the sarva sapaksha vipaksha vyavrittah pakshamatra vrittihi. So what happens in this case? So we go back to the sapaksha vipaksha words terms again. Paksha sapaksha vipaksha. Paksha is a place where the whole action is happening, right? We want to understand what is going on. But in the sapaksha is something where we know that these things are happening. We can easily establish a relationship there. In the vipaksha is it will never happen. The word used here is called sarva. So this particular issue is happening on the paksha, but it is not happening in the sapaksha and vipaksha. So paksha matra vrittihi, it only happens in the paksha. You can prove something, you can prove a hetu only on the paksha, but you cannot prove the hetu on the sapaksha and vipaksha. So asadharanaha yata shabdo nityah shabdatvat iti. Shabdatvam hi sarvebhyah nityebhyah anityebhyascha vyavrittam shabdhamatra vrittihi. So when we argue that the sound is eternal, because the generic property of the sound, because sound is a generic property. So if you say that the soundness is there, so that is why the sound is eternal. That is also not true, because the soundness is only available in the sound, but I mean, it is not in with that paksha, we cannot prove with the other items. So that is that becomes a asadharana hetu. So in the generic property of the sound exists in the eternal akasha, but it is not a non-eternal objects like vayu, agni, jalam, prithvi also. So in both of these cases it exists. So that it becomes a uniquely inconsistent savya vichara dosha. In the third one is Anvaya Vyatireka Drishtanta Rahitaha Anupasamhari Yata Sarvam Anityam Prameyatvat iti. Atra Sarvasyapi Pakshatvat Drishtanto Nasti. In the case of this is an inconclusive. So the third of the Vichara dosha is inconclusive. It's called Anupasamhari. In the case of an inconclusive fallacy situation, the example provided does not support or oppose the case. So if it is argued that an object is non-eternal because it is understood by true cognition, then everything becomes the paksha. So we cannot just say an object is there, and because of my whole cognition is my reasoning to establish an object, right? So in this case, everything becomes a paksha. Sarva becomes a paksha. And there is no example that can be used to give the positive or negative propositions. So when everything becomes a subject of conclusion, we definitely don't conclude anything because we cannot give an Anvaya Vyapti or a Vyatireka Vyapti to explain this relationship. So that is a bad hetu again. So those are the three types of inconsistent definition of the Savya Vichara Vyapti. The next one is the Viruddha. Sadhya Abhavavat Vyaptaha Hetuhu Viruddha. Yata Shabdo Nityah Kritakatvat iti. Kritakatvam hi Nityatva Abhavena Nityatvena Vyaptam. So basically the Viruddha happens when the item to be proved, the whole sadhyam itself, is absent as a reason. So when you try to prove sound is eternal like a part. So when you say the sound part is not eternal, we all know that because an object that gets created is anitya. So part is a anitya vastu. Sound is a nitya vastu. But here the anityatva of the part pervades over the nityatva of the sound because using the example of the part, we cannot prove the sound there. So the Viruddha is the opposite of the Sadhetuhu. So here the absence of Sadhyam is existing there, which is the Sadhya Bhava. So something like we say, this is a Dravya because it is due to the absence of Guna. That is also not possible. It can be a lot of other items that are there. Similarly, this is earth due to the absence of smell because that's also not possible. Earth is very much related to the smell property. So these are different kinds of arguments that are happening. They are the Viruddha dosha. And the third of the five hetuvabhasas, the five doshas is called as a Satpratipaksha. Yasya sadhya abhava sadakam hetu anantaram vidyate satpratipaksha. Yata shabdo nityah shavanatvat shabdatvat iti. Shabdah nityah karyatvat gatavat iti. So in this issue, what happens with the Satpratipaksha, in the parallel counter argument, there is a fallacy of equalization where the reason is counterbalanced by another reason, which proves the negation of what is to be proved. So basically, this argument goes on two different people are arguing in two different ways, and comes to no conclusion there. So when the argument arises where one says sound is eternal as it is cognized by the organ of hearing, and the opponent says sound is non-eternal since it is created like a part. So in the one ground established that sound is eternal, and the other says non-eternal, and there are two contesting grounds, and both fail to prove what needs to be proved. So here, nobody wins the argument. So that way, this is a very parallel counter argument, and which again is not helping us in understanding, which will not help us in getting the true knowledge. Then the fourth one of the Hetuvabhasaha is Asiddhaha. Asiddhaha is where there is unestablished or unknown fallacy there. So Asiddha is of three types. Asiddhas Trividaha, Ashraya Asiddhaha, Surupa Asiddhaha, Vyapyatva Asiddhaha Sheti. So there are three types of asiddha, which is one is the ashraya asiddha, which is where the paksha is unknown or the paksha is not clearly defined. In the swarupa asiddha, where the hetu is not properly defined. And the third one is the vyapyatva siddha, where the vyapti is the relationship. The relationship is not defined properly. So the paksha is where the sadhya needs to be established. If that is not defined properly, that is a fallacy too. If the reason itself is not defined, that is also a fallacy. And the vyapti relationship is not defined properly, that is also a fallacy there. When the paksha is not known, it results in ashraya siddhi, and the hetu is not known, the swarupa siddhi happens, and the vyapti is not known, the vyapyatva asiddhi happens. So now let's try to understand what the ashraya siddha is. So where the paksha is not known. Ashraya siddha yata gaganāravindam surabhihi aravindatvat saroja-aravindatvat. So ashraya siddha, what it is like how gaganāravindam. So in the sky, somebody says the sky lotus is there. The sky lotus smells like the lotus in the pond. So yata gaganāravindam surabhihi aravindatvat saroja-aravindatvat. So, but there is nothing called as a sky lotus. And no, I mean, even if this lotus is in the sky, nobody knows what it smells like, because that's something which is totally imagination going on. The sadhyam itself is having a problem. The sadhyam of the sky lotus itself is having a problem. So that is the reason why this is a ashraya siddha. So since there is nothing called the sky lotus, the basis itself becomes an asiddha. The paksha is a sky lotus. Since the paksha is incorrect, it becomes a ashraya asiddhi. The second case is the Swarupa Siddhi. Swarupa Siddha. Swarupa Siddha. In the Swarupa Siddha, yata Shabdaha Gunaha Chakshushatvat. Atra Chakshushatvam Shabde Nasti Shabdasya Shravanatvat. So next is when the hetu itself is a problem. Hetu is the problem of getting the asiddha fallacy. So that is called as a Swarupa Siddha. This is where a proposition says that the sound is quality because it can be grasped by eyes. Again, the reasoning of using eyes to understand sound, which is totally different, not possible. Eyes are not the tools to undertake the sound. So the faculty of sound is ears, and the eyes cannot be the reason to identify the sound. So here the reason itself is wrong. So the hetu of a vision to prove sound is incorrect, it becomes a Swarupa Siddha. So in argument cases, if the reasoning itself is bad, then it becomes a Swarupa Siddha. And the last one of the Siddha is called as this Vyapyatva Siddha. To understand that, we have to understand a term called Upadhi. So what is that? So Sopadiko Vyapyatva Siddha Sadhya Vyapakatve Sadi Sadhana avyapaka upadhi. So to understand this, we have to come back to two terminologies we learned earlier. So there's something called as the pratiyogi, anuyogi, and the apratiyogi and the pratiyogi. So this next sloka talks about it. The sadhya samanadikarana, sadhya samanadikarana atyanta abhava pratiyogitvam sadhya vyapakatvam sadhanavat nishta atyanta abhava pratiyogitvam sadhana vyapakatvam. So what is the pratiyogitvam and apratiyogitvam? So when you have a part, right? So that we talk about the abhava principle. The abhava principle is the part is not there. So we say gatha abhavaha. So the absence of part. So when the part is not there, then, so the pratiyogi of the part's absence is the part. So that is what we did. That is a relationship. So when I say how is a part, the absence of part related to a part, it is the pratiyogi. So that is how the pratiyogi is defined. Yasya abhavaha saha tasya pratiyogi. So if the part is absent, or the part itself becomes a pratiyogi of that. So that in the Shastras, whenever you see the Nyaya Shastra explanations, you'll say pratiyogi, apratiyogi, and all those things are repeatedly lot. So we have to understand that abhava principles are used, and the abhava principles are basically talking about this, this concept of pratiyogitvam and apratiyogitvam. So the apratiyogitva state, so the part, let's say the yagashala. Here in this picture, I'm talking about a real yagashala. In this picture, there is no part. So in this case, the yagashala is a apratiyogi of the part, where it is a totally absent. So it is an atyanta abhavaha. So this is totally not there. So that becomes a apratiyogi. It can be anything. It can be a donkey, it can be a monkey, or it can be a tree or anything like that. So where the part is absolutely not there. So that becomes a apratiyogi. So yasmin abhavaha, that becomes a apratiyogi. So absence of part is present in the yagashala. So there we know for sure that the part is not there. So these are the two different words that have been used. So when the sadhyam has a relationship that can be established, but the instrument is not valid, it is called upadhi. So let's go through this in an example, in a little bit. Sorry, see my screen. Okay. In the case of a upadhi, what happens is the sadhya, the thing that is to be known, is present and it has a relationship, but the instrument or the hetu, that is the sadhanam, is there, is having a problem. So when you have the sadhya, that the place, the item that needs to be proved has a relationship, and when you have the instrument that needs to prove the thing is missing, or it does not have a relationship, it comes to a state called as the upadhi. So when the upadhi is present, we get to this kind of a vyapyatva asiddha. So let's try to understand a little bit more here. I think so. I'll just give you the literal translation of the shloka. The sopadiko vyapyatva asiddha sadhya vyapakatve sati sadhana avyapakaha upadhihi. So the sadhya is present, sadhya vyapakatva asti. The sadhana is not present. The instrument of this thing is not in that relationship. It is present, but it is not in that relationship. So that is why it's called as a upadhi. So sadhya samanadikarana atyanta abhava pratiyogitvam sadhya vyapakatvam. So for the fact that needs to be proved, the sadhya vyapakatvam is not present in the counterpart, the pratiyogitvam of the absolute negation, atyanta abhavaha, on the same basis in the adhikarana. So we'll go through this example the next shloka, but I think basically what happens is sadhya and the sadhanam have the adhikaranam here. The atyanta abhavasya apratiyogi becomes a upadhi, and atyanta abhavasya pratiyogi also becomes a the sadhanasya atyanta abhavasya pratiyogi becomes a upadhi. So this is where this kind of a defect happens. So let's go through this example. Maybe that's much more easier to understand there. Parvatah dhumavan vannimatvat iti atra ardhendra samyogaha upadhihi. So now there's an example. Let's go back to the example where the mountain has fire. The contact of the wet fuel is called as a upadhi. So now if you have the reason why they are saying is because the smoke has to be there. Tatahi yatra dhumaha tatra ardhendra samyogaha iti sadhya vyapakata. So now when you have a fire and the fire is, and you see smoke, and the smoke is happening because you have some wet fuel, wet things that are causing it. If the trees are wet and the trees are burning, the smoke comes, or fuel is there, wet fuel is there. So there's a ardha in that when you have a wet indanam is a fuel. When the wet fuel is in contact with fire, a smoke happens, which is a normal thing. So even in the yajna, if you put more ghee, there is more smoke that comes. So that's what happens. It causes it. Whenever there is a smoke, there is a contact with a wet fuel. There is a relationship here. There is a sadhya vyapakatva. Yatra vannihi tatra ardhendrana samyogaha nasti ayoga loka ardhendra samyogaha abhavavatiti sadhana vyapakata. Now, just because with the smoke, right, we cannot, so just because with the fire, we cannot say that, because sometimes when you, in some instances, when you, for example, when you heat an iron ball, there is fire, but the smoke is not there. That relationship of the smoke and fire the fire is not present in that iron ball. Whereas in the trees when they are burning, we get the smoke and there is a fire relationship. So there is an inconsistent thing. So there is a sadhya avyapakata. So there is an established relationship with us when the wet fuel has contact with the fire, and then it creates smoke. And when in the case of an iron ball, there is fire, but there is no smoke, because in that case there is no wet fuel. The iron ball is just there. Ayoga holakaha is an iron ball. So evam sadhya vyapakatve sati sadhana avyapakat ardhendra samyogaha upadi. So that is called as a upadi. Sopadikatvat vannimatvam vyapyatva asiddham. So thus, when there is a sadhya vyapakata, but the contact of wet fuel is a sadhanam, becomes upadi. So in this case, what happens is, let's go back here. So here the sadhya is the place where we are saying the mountain is there. We're trying to prove that the mountain has fire, but basically based on the wet fuel. We are using the wet fuel as the reason there. So ardhendra samyoga, because here we are not using the smoke or anything like that. We are using because the wet fuel is causing the fire. It is there, the sadhyam is there, the action is happening, the wet fuel is there, that is causing the smoke. That relationship is there. However, that instrument of wet fuel is not always going to cause the fire, because the fire can be there without the wet fuel also. And that's where that relationship, the instrument does not have a relationship. So when you have a relationship where the item needs to be proved is there, but the instrument is always not consistent there, that becomes the upadhi. And that is the vyapyatva siddha. So this is very deep and technical into the knowledge. And basically, when you see the shastras and all the texts, you will see these types of upadhis being described a lot. And these types of hetuabhasaha being described a lot. And when you see the upadhi, that is how you understand. That means the relationship of the instrument is not consistently with the sadhyam. That is what causes the vyapakatva asiddha. Okay. And the last one of the hetuabhasaka is yasya sadhya bhavaha. It's called as bhaditaha. Yasya sadhya bhavaha pramanantarena nishchitaha saha bhaditaha yata vannihi ushnaho anushno dravyatvat iti. Anushnatvam sadhyam tad abhava ushnatvam sparshana pratyakshena grihyatiti bhaditvam. So when here is a negation of what is to be proved is established without doubt by any other proof. So if somebody argues that the fire is cold because it is a substance, because it's a dravyam. So yata vannihi anushnaha dravyatvat iti. So it becomes somebody is arguing that way. If coldness has to be proved, the negation of the coldness is warmness, which can be inferred by touch itself. So we cannot prove that, because somebody can go and touch the fire, the warmness is there. So the negation is already there, proven by there. So the argument becomes absurd. It is a bhaditaha. So this is the absurd argument, and that's that is again a hetuabhasaha. And thus sense anumana pramanam. I think so. Srinivasan, can you play the end summary, and then we can turn off recording and open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Padmanabhan ji. Very detailed today.
Yeah, can we play the summary and yeah.
मंगलम गुरु श्री चंद्रमौलीश्वर के शक्ति गणपति शारदांबिके शंकराचार्यर के शक्ति गणपति महागणपति शारदांबिके काल भैरव के काली दुर्गई के वीर धीर शूर हनुम मारुति चरण के मल्लिकार्जुन के चल्व जनार्दन के अंबा भवानी कंबद गणपति चंडी चामुंडी के श्री कृष्ण भगवान के श्री चक्र चक्रवासिनिके सीताराम लक्ष्मण सहित मारुति चरणतिके विद्यारण्यर्के विद्याशंकरर्के वागीश्वरिके वज्रदेग गरुड आंजनेयर्के श्रीवल्ली देवसेना समेत सुब्रह्मण्यर्के तुंगभद्रैके श्रृंगनिवासिनिके श्रृंगेरी पुरिயில் நிலைத்திருக்கும் எங்கள் சாரதாம்பிகைக்கே सच्चिदानंद शिव अभिनव नृसिंह भारती के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु सार्वभौमर के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु विद्यातीर्थर के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु भारती तीर्थर के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु विदुशेखर भारती के मंगलम गुरु श्री चंद्रमौलीश्वर के शक्ति गणपति शारदाम्बिक शंकराचार्यर के शक्ति गणपति महागणपति शारदाம்பிகை के श्रृंगेरी புரியில் நிறைந்திருக்கும் எங்கள் சாரதாம்பிகைக்கே